So to begin into looking at the whole issue of coping skills, what are coping skills, and are they the same as what we use to release stress when we're dysregulated and so on, for parents who might be wondering?
Yes, absolutely. So the definition that I use for coping skills, it's a way that we can deal with big feelings, big emotions, and overwhelming situations. So I think about it in certain terms of like healthy versus unhealthy coping skills. Like, it is a coping skill when you are stuck in traffic and you are frustrated with that, to yell or to get mad at somebody. That is a coping skill. Is it healthy? Probably not. Like, is it going to help the situation? Is it going to make you feel any better as a parent or as an adult? No. But you can start to figure out some other things that you can do that would be more healthy, like using some positive self-talk, taking some deep breaths, whatever's going to work for you to help you get through that moment. So just like, I think to your point, when talking about dysregulation, talking about, trying to help kids deal with stress, those are all those things that we do. Those what I would consider coping skills. How are we coping with challenging situations? How are we coping with living in a pandemic? How are we coping with anxiety? How are we coping with stress? So all of that sort of falls into that category of coping skills. And then, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was, as you were talking, I thought about the description you gave, or the example rather you gave of, yelling when you're in the car. Honestly, a lot of people don't think of that as coping skill. They think of the meditation, the deep breathing, and so on. So I'm happy that you're describing the healthy type of coping skills and the unhealthy type of coping skills. And perhaps for parents, you can describe some of those unhealthy coping skills that they might not realize are coping skills, and maybe just thinking children are being difficult or being withdrawn or whatever. So, I think parents, it's important for them to not just know the deep breathing, thinking about something beautiful, counting backwards from 100, stress ball, you name it. But what are some of those not uncomfortable, but unhealthy coping skills that we as parents don't realize are coping skills?
So what's interesting is when you think about, especially little ones, they can be very, they can hit, they can bite, they can kick, they can yell, they can tantrum. And all of that is, they're not trying to be difficult children. They are trying to deal with being overwhelmed or being frustrated or being mad or being sad. So those are their ways of coping. Now, we don't want them to do that. It's not great when somebody is biting you. It's not great when somebody is hitting you. It's not great when somebody yells or knocks down towers when they're trying to build and they get frustrated, right? But so what can we do? We can tell them and show them some different ways of being able to manage those emotions when they happen. Those emotions are not bad in and of themselves. Being angry is not a bad thing. Being frustrated is not a bad thing. Being sad is not bad. It's how you deal with the emotions that matter. So yes, our kids are having big emotions. Yes, they're showing us maybe in unlovable ways, but we know that at that moment, they need some support. They need some help. They need some different ways of doing things. And so we're noticing, they're trying to build a tower. They get really frustrated. They knock it and they are starting to kick things. Okay. So we can talk about like getting them to a place where they're a little bit more settled, and then but when they're calmer, trying something else, saying, I saw that you got really frustrated when you were trying to build that tower. And I noticed that you started kicking things, and I was a little bit worried because I thought it was going to hit your little sister. And, I didn't want you to get hurt, and I don't want it myself to get hurt. So what are some other things that we could do when you feel that way? Can you squeeze your hands and release them? Can you give yourself a really big hug? Can you ask for a hug? Can we try doing a breath exercise together where you put your hand on your heart and one hand on your belly and you move your belly so you feel a little bit better when that frustration happens? I know it's frustrating. It's aggravating when it doesn't work like you want it to.
Yeah.
But we need to think about some ways that we can do it.
what is coming up is validating children's feelings, acknowledging that you see it. But it's so important what you say, that parents might go into punishing their children when they see them acting out, destroying their toys or things or other things around the home, or just having full meltdown. So it's important to realize that that's a coping skill to help them as they become overwhelmed by those stress hormones and become dysregulated. So it's to think, well, they're not being difficult, they're not being mean, they're not being intentionally mean, because some parents think they're intentional. It's their immature way of dealing with whatever stressor that they're experiencing in the moment. I think that's important, as you described what you said earlier.
Yep. And the way that I've heard it said, and I can't remember who says this, but the person who quotes this, who the quote is by, but they're not giving me a difficult time. They're having a hard time. Like, they're not giving me a hard time. They're having a hard time. They're showing you, their behavior is showing you that something is up. And so it's really hard as a parent. I know this. It's very hard to keep your cool and to put on like your detective hat and figure out, well, what was going on around them, or what was happening, or what can we do to sort of help manage this in a safer and healthier way? It's hard to do that.